Hello, Internet people. This is Greg and...
Meredith.
Why am I such a radio guy? I don't
I
want
don't
to
know.
do Mr. Radio
And you
voice.
come in and I always sound like I don't know what my name is. I'm like, Meredith?
Yeah.
I need to go in with my radio voice if I have one.
All right, guys. This is your 9 to 5 drive. It's Midnight Local. Catching you on the interstate. Today, we're talking about everybody's feel-good favorite movie, Silence of the Lambs. Sound effects. Fart noises.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Silence of the Lambs, rated
Silence of
R.
the Lambs. Yep.
Just under 2 hours, $19 million
tight.
budget, grossed $272 million worldwide.
Well, there you go. That's how you do it. Yeah. That's... Put out 19, make 272. Bada bing, bada boom.
I mean, I would imagine a lot of that is due to its Best Picture win. I wonder if it sort of came out and coasted and then skyrocketed in popularity. I do know that was partially the case. Like, it wasn't like an immediate hit.
And that was box office draw. That's not like, over its life. Because if it was over its life, that would be like nothing.
Yeah. No, I don't think
if you
that's
looked it up
like.
briefly without digging deep, I guarantee that was box office, not lifetime numbers, because that's usually what
it's the numbers I get on IMDb, and that's usually what they list. Yeah,
that's always box office. Yeah. That's box office. Not usually adjusted for inflation or changes in ticket pricing. One of the more interesting stats to look at the success of a movie is how many tickets did it sell when you look at that historically, because remember, tickets used to be a nickel back in the 50s or so.
That's a really good point. So when you're grossing 272, that's an insane amount of eyeballs on this movie.
Exactly. Yeah, if it was in the early 90s, I don't know, I was paying probably $4 or $5 to go to the movies back then.
Yeah, we had the dollar theater. God, I love the dollar theater.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this. If you've never worked at a movie theater, you don't know how this works. So the movie theater gets I've worked at a movie theater. Usually, you get the reels. There's some licensing fee, but then the first week it's out, and it could have changed now, and there's always different terms, but generally speaking, it's like that first week that the movie's in theaters, the distributor gets 80% of ticket revenue, and then the second week it gets 70%, and it tapers down over time, which is one of the reasons why theaters love movies that stay in the theater for a long time, that are big sustainable hits. So something like Silence of the Lambs probably made a lot of money for the theaters if it was really doing its numbers after it won Best Picture or something like that.
Drawing it out, yeah.
But that's also the reason that people always say that the theaters make their money on concessions, and it's true that the only money the theater really ever consistently makes is on the snacks and the popcorn and concessions. So if you're trying to support your local theater, going to the movie is great, but you got to buy that popcorn. You got to buy those snow caps.
Where Alamo Drafthouse has a brilliant business model, because they're selling you full-on dinner when you sit down at the movie.
That could be fantastic. Although, do they do dessert?
Oh yeah.
See, they shouldn't.
Why?
In the restaurant business, desserts are notoriously impossible to price the way that people expect them to be priced, and also at a profit. The margins on dessert are almost impossible to make money on.
I think most of their menu is not dessert. They also have alcoholic shakes, which I would imagine would do better, because you're paying for the alcohol in there. Yeah. You'll pay a lot more for that. It's like they've got cookies and things like that. It's not like full on creme brulee.
Right. Ironically, I don't know very much about building a bar menu to a price spec, so I don't know. The margins on liquor might be tight too. But you know what?
Not watching a lot of Bar Rescue.
Oh God, no. You gotta. Where's your butt funnel? You gotta have a booty funnel right here. I'll tell you guys. Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring in a liquor sponsor. Boom. Now all of your cocktails are made with Sky Vanilla vodka. Okay, you guys don't know what you're doing.
He's not that bad, but he does spend a segment on his show talking about how to make drinks that make money, or he'll talk about when he's watching them do pours that are insane, that are losing the bar money, which is interesting information.
You should do measured pours. I don't care what anybody says, especially if you're the owner. You should be doing.
If you're running a business, absolutely.
Well, you are running a business.
Well, I mean, as opposed to what you do on the show.
Oh yeah, totally. it comes up sometimes where people are like, oh, I want to put this on my menu. And I'm like, good luck. I don't know how you're going to afford to.
This drink will cost $56. All right.
Yeah.
We're on drinks. We're in a much more cheery space than this movie should allow for.
Enjoying movies are always enjoyable.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's actually not true. There are some movies where you watch them and you say, that was a very effective piece of cinema that I never need in my life again, ever.
This movie's dark, but it's not that, interestingly. I've seen this movie at least a dozen times.
Can we come back to that point? Because this is killing me. I have one more thing.
All right, do your
about
one more
desserts.
Thing.
There was a restaurant. There was a restaurant that we used to go to on the Upper West Side called Mermaid. And to illustrate my point about desserts being impossible to make money on, they just gave you a dessert. There's no dessert menu. You get the chocolate mousse. It's built into the that's it. You get it. And you know what? Everybody very happy about that.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Right. And it's just a little nicey thing. All right. Now tell me what you were telling me about the movie. Restart your thought.
No, I was just saying, like, to your point about movies that you don't really ever need to see again. You see it once. It was effective. This is dark, but it's not that. Like, this has an entertainment value that keeps you coming back. Yeah. I was saying I've seen it at least a dozen times.
I'm going to ruin it. This movie's from 1991.
I think you can spoil. If anyone's listening to a podcast about movies and mad about spoilers, that's on them 100%. Yep.
Well, one thing that I'm only just now adding up, but this would have been a great observation to make while I was watching it. Nobody dies in this movie.
Not true.
It's a movie about a serial killer. Nobody dies. No, one person dies who was killed outside the context of the movie. They found that body before the movie begins rolling.
The two people that he kills, two cops in the cell in the middle of the movie.
Hannibal. I forgot about Hannibal. I don't even think of Hannibal. He's not the bad guy. Okay, you're right. I'm stupid. I was thinking about Buffalo Bill.
But the serial killer in the movie, you do not actually see him kill anyone. That is true, which is interesting. He's killed.
And you find the results of one of his murders. You find one of the bodies.
Yeah, right. And you're in a race to save the person who's been captured next.
Exactly.
Which, so good. The stakes are perfect. And Hannibal's killings are...
They feel like they're in self-defense.
I mean, he's freeing himself from prison, kind of.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, though, is like they don't feel... It's interesting to me because like this guy is such a ruthless murderer, but like I don't feel like any of his killings are totally without motivation. The one thing I will say is that those two cops that he killed were being nothing but courteous to him. They were so nice.
Yeah. They were mad at him for ordering a second dinner. They were kind of smack talking him behind his back.
Oh, no. Listen, have you seen Terminator 2?
Absolutely.
Okay. The dude who sexually assaults Sarah Connor by licking her face while she's tied up only gets a decent ass kicking. You know, it doesn't even like he ate that guy's face.
Okay, so let's start. Where to start with this movie? I think
I know exactly where I want to start if I can.
Okay.
She is on the obstacle course at the beginning of this movie, and someone runs her down to let her know that the boss wants to talk to her.
Mm-hmm. The movie was supposed to start with her in that SWAT training scene, you know, in a couple right after she meets Hannibal.
And I think she's not doing very well in there, right?
She gets killed in that SWAT. Yeah, like killed. Yeah. She gets fake killed in that SWAT training scene. But the reason
Where's your danger? It's in the corner.
She thought that too many movies kind of started that way, and it set it off on too much of a like exciting cop movie tone, and really.
So that was her input.
It was her input, yeah.
She was just like, I'm not making this movie if you don't do it this way.
I don't think it was quite that dramatic, but it was her suggestion.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much pull she had in her career at this point. This is around the time she's doing The Accused. She's got a career.
Oh, yeah. Directing, producing.
I don't mean that. I mean, like, she started as an actual child actor.
Oh, yeah. She's 3 years off of The Accused.
Accused was 3 years earlier.
88. This is 91.
You want to blow your mind? Look up Candle Shoe and Taxi Driver. I think she made those two movies within like a year of each other. And Candle Shoe is like an absolute like, woo, Disney movie.
It's incredible. You just keep going back. So her first credit is in 1969.
Which one? What movie?
It's not a movie. It's a TV series. The Doris Day Show. Doris Day.
Nice. Nice.
Incredible. Her first movie, maybe Napoleon and Samantha in 1972. Taxi Driver in 1976.
And what year is Candle Shoe?
1977. Yeah.
Have you seen Candle Shoe?
No, I haven't.
Legit, it's a Disney movie, and it's about whatever. We could do it in another episode or something, but like it's crazy, the whiplash of going from Taxi Driver to Candle Shoe.
She was much more experienced than when she came to this movie than I have ever thought that she was.
I don't know when it would have happened, but I think at some point she was probably going through a rebrand from child star to movie star, and I would bet that was The Accused. I bet The Accused was kind of her, oh, she's a grown-up actress now, but I could be mistaken on that.
Well, because you read...
Took us way off track.
Not really. I mean, we're talking about Jodie Foster. Like, you read a lot of trivia in this movie about how terrified she was of Anthony Hopkins, which I guess is probably why I felt that she was inexperienced. I mistook that for intimidation, when I think she was just genuinely terrified of him playing that character. Which I also read, and I'd never heard this before, but before filming this movie, he was dating Martha Stewart, who had to break up with him because she couldn't separate him from Hannibal Lecter, which I don't know if it's true or not, but it's hilarious.
The worst case of typecasting ever. Hey, fun fact about Martha Stewart. Her first acting role was as a coat check girl in The Big Sleep. So she worked with Bogart.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I love Martha Stewart.
She was a model.
Yeah, and
sometimes I impress myself.
Give yourself a good old pat on the back there, Greg.
I would, but my elbow would hit the mic. I'm going to drop a controversial hot take here.
Go ahead.
I don't think he's a very good actor in this movie.
Yeah, I disagree with you, but why?
There's not a lot of range here. He's just really kind of one note all the way through. I don't see a whole lot going on. You know, I mean, I think he is very good at portraying this character, but it's hard for me to look at that. Like, this is going to sound awful, but I tend to look at things like an athlete. Not that I am an athlete, but I look at movies and acting and comedy like from an athletic standpoint, and I think like you're real good at the javelin. You know what I mean? But like, where's the rest? You know, you just got this one thing in this movie. There's no depth. There's not a lot going on. I don't think the character needs it. I don't think the role calls for it. But so many people talk about what an amazing role, what an amazing performance this is, and I guess I get what you're saying, but it's also like would you call George Clooney's performance in Ocean's 11 amazing? Like, no, not really. Like, he's just kind of like, that's what comes natural. He's just doing that.
Yeah, I guess. Well, first of all, I don't think this character comes natural to him. I would hope not.
I do.
Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But I also think that this is a character that can very, very easily go over the top very quickly. And I think he runs that line very well. Like, I think instead of pushing this character who the movie makes him superhuman, the movie tells you in the first scene, like, that you meet him, he's behind his own special glass. And I know that's specific to the movie to make their scenes less like encumbered by bars in between them.
Yeah, exactly.
But they build him up. He kills a man by talking to him. Like, he is something other than human. He's as close to superhuman as you can get without dipping into supernatural, in my opinion. And there's a very easy trap to go way over the top with a character like that. And I think that what makes this character like iconic, it's iconic. Everything that's spun off from Silence of the Lambs has spun off of him. I know there's a Clarice show now, but like, he is this movie.
There's a Clarice show?
I think there was a show based off of her younger or older.
There's a Hannibal show.
Right. Everything up until a certain point was based off of him.
I was thinking about your point about him being superhuman. Anthony Hopkins, technically, and I don't know how he breaks down a script or doesn't, he doesn't need to know about any of that, because every single thing you're telling me happens outside of the scope of his character. Mm-hmm. If you just look at the dialogues and his scenes, like, I don't think he even needs to know that he talked that guy to death to play Hannibal Lecter.
I don't think that this movie does what it does without him. I don't think that it makes
100%.
Yeah, 70.
100%.
I don't think it makes 250 million at the box office without him.
This is probably me just having a chip on my shoulder and just wanting the world to be a bigger meritocracy than it actually is, and like being angry that particularly in terms of creativity it isn't sometimes. But like, when people say that such and such put in an amazing performance, I feel like what I often hear in that is like, no, you just like that person.
But
you just
do
think
people really love Anthony Hopkins, like, at this point in his career? I don't think so.
No, I think people love Hannibal Lecter. I think the power fantasy is deep, and I think that people are really drawn to this character, particularly because he's a kind of an avenging angel. The first person we see him kill threw his spooge at Jodie Foster's face, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's a darkness there, but, you know, there's also this he's kind of a daddy. He's like protecting little Jodie, who I was not prepared for how young she looks in this movie.
Like
she is young, and he, you know, I mean, and he will never come for her. He's never gonna hurt her.
Yeah, she likes him. I always felt that every time I watch this movie. Like, she doesn't. And
he's
then
trying to help her career.
Yeah,
like, that's like a specific motivation of his.
Yes, and he protects her, and she says to her friend, like, he's not going to come after me. He would find it rude. She's like, I can't explain it, but he would find it rude in some way.
Right. Yeah.
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 He has a code of ethics that is reliable.
Inscrutable. Who do we see him going after in the end of the movie? He's not a warden, actually. He's a head psychologist, because he wasn't in a prison. He was in a mental institution. And that guy really sucks. Like, if there's a villain in this movie, it's him. Well, sorry. If there's a villain other than the forces of supernatural power that are killing people around it, because, like, Buffalo Bill is almost a supernatural entity in this movie. And isn't doing anything in the movie to stymie his being apprehended. He is not evading the police. He is not outsmarting them. The person who prevents him from getting caught sooner is that psychologist. By fucking with the thing that's going on between Lecter and Clarice.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Another point about the movie opening the way that it does is just her being alone, which I think is a theme of the movie, because she is a female FBI agent. She has one friend, but mostly, and especially for the first like 20 minutes of the movie, you see her surrounded by men all of the time, and whether purposeful or not.
And small. And, like, they're bigger than her.
Right. In the background,
she's like tiny.
Like, she's running in one scene with her friend, and the guys are all turning around to check out their asses. Like, even in the first scene you see her with that psychologist, there's a picture of, like, 4 men behind her looking over her shoulder. Like, she walks down, and all of the guys are making sex jokes at her as she walks to meet
the prisoners.
Yeah, the prisoners.
Yeah, the prisoners are. The guy who lets her in is a pretty cool dude, he seems like.
He is.
Yeah, literally the dude with the key. I think he's just in that one scene. He's like very kind of he like, definitely does not sexualize her. You're gonna be okay. I'm right here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But he's another minority, which I think was very poignant to me as well. Like,
no, maybe.
And
wait, is the argument here that women are a minority? I just want to make sure I understand.
In the world that she's in the
context of the film. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
True. Okay.
And she's surrounded all of the time. And it was like the juxtaposition of the head psychologist sort of poking at, oh, you've been placed here by your superiors because you're pretty, and Hannibal hasn't seen a girl in a long time, and you're going to throw him off. And I get it. You're not good at what you do. You're just a ploy. You're just a pawn. And you're always questioning whether that is the reason.
Which is crazy to me, because, like, I immediately in that saying that, like, yeah, it's kind of true. She is a pawn. He got that right. But the idea that a pretty girl is going to turn Hannibal Lecter in any way at all, like, I don't think he's gay or asexual or any. I just think that now Hannibal Lecter cares about eating people. Like, he does not care about pretty girls. Yeah. Like, that is not going. Like, you are a bad psychologist if you think this is the way to get under his skin, that he hasn't seen a girl in a while. Like, dude, have you even spoken to this guy?
Yeah. Or that it would soften him in any way.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. But is the sexism that's sort of coded and backhanded worse than the overt sexism of the people that she walks by in the cage? I think at the moment she gets cum thrown on her, yes, but before that it's kind of like they're equally annoying. Pretty nasty. Yeah.
I just, as a man, I want to point out, I find it hard that one would be able to produce enough to grab a handful and fling it across the room. I don't know. Just seems, I mean, that guy had a talent and he could have been making a living with it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he's dead now.
He's dead. He was talked to death. The the penultimate point. And I think actually at that point it does kind of, it's almost like this is a whole arc. When she's in the room with the body and all of the cops are in there and she throws them out, I'm betting that's it. We don't deal with her versus the boys, the sexism of that anymore. I feel like that is the climax of that storyline, and now she's past that as a character. I could be wrong.
She addresses it for the first time after that, because right before that, he also uses her superior. What's his name? The sergeant that's like
the guy.
Jack
the guy
Crawford.
with the worst office in the world. I can't. He's such a big deal, and he's like in a pile of concrete blocks with no window.
That's long. Like that is how it feels. FBI.
I'm sure.
Feels, yeah.
I've just been watching a lot of the X-Files, and like Mulder's office is supposed to be in the basement, but even he's got a window.
Nice.
You know, like it's a lot more nice. Yeah. It's much more cozy.
So Jack Crawford tells the chief in this like small town, like, can we talk about this privately? You know, and implying that like not in front of the woman, and they go off into another room, and he acknowledges it a couple scenes later and says like, did that piss you off that I did that to sort of gain this guy's trust?
Yep.
Like, these guys don't matter. And she tells him like, it absolutely matters. Like, they're looking to you, they're learning from you, how you act matters. And he kind of goes, okay, like he accepts what she says. Yeah.
I mean, but multiple things are true there too. Like, that may not have, like, we are trying to solve a murder and this is the way this guy is going to operate, and I need to meet him on his level or we're going to lose an hour to this argument. You know, like,
which is
sometimes
kind of what he said, but for the script to even do that is so interesting.
And I told that sheriff we shouldn't talk in front of a woman. That really burned you, didn't it? It was just smoke, Starling. I had to get rid of him.
Matters, Mr. Crawford. Cops look at you to see how to act. Matters.
Point taken.
I want to talk about that, and I don't know when last I have heard this, but I've definitely seen this movie trotted out as evidence of vilifying the trans person, of using being transcoded as a synonym for villainous or something like that, in the way that sometimes, like particularly in older movies, like, oh, this person is a disfigurement, they're going to be the bad guy, or gay characters or gay coded characters have been the bad guy in movies a lot too. I've seen this movie trotted out that way, and I was looking for it when I watched it. And I don't think it's there. And actually, I think that the movie has a really progressive, especially for 1991, stance on it, because Lecter says, no, he's not a real transsexual, which of course is the term at the time. He just thinks he is.
Billy is not a real transsexual, but he thinks he is. He tries to be. He's tried to be a lot of things, I expect.
Which implies that there are real transsexuals and that it is not like a deviant lifestyle choice, which to me sounds very advanced thinking for the early 90s.
So they make that point very directly. She goes, no, she cuts him off and says, no. In the psychology book, you know, it says that there is no link between transsexuals and
also
violence.
True. There's no correlation in the literature between transsexualism and violence. Transsexuals are very passive.
And and he cuts her off and is like, you're missing my point. But they also, the script makes a point to put that in there and to take it a step further to acknowledge sex reassignment, like surgeries, and say that these are the places that you get them, and that might be a place to search him down. And then Hannibal Lecter makes the point to say that this is a person who has probably searched for many identities in his lifetime because of his abuse.
Look for severe childhood disturbances associated with violence. Our Billy wasn't born a criminal, Clarice. He was made one through years of systematic abuse.
And you see evidence of that. There's like, I didn't ever notice this before this time watching it, but there's a lot of Nazi paraphernalia in his bunker.
I love the cozy Nazi quilt.
We had to rewind it. I was like, holy shit, was that a swastika? And we were
two
like,
of them.
Yeah, it sure was. And then you see other
just
propaganda.
Just quilting my Nazi quilt over here. It's just...
But also, I watched this movie with Ray, and we talked a lot about it while watching. I do think that anything that portrays transness as the reason for violence is difficult.
I think that's totally fair. I just don't think that's here.
Well, especially because there's not a lot of other representation for people at the time. Like, this is probably in the early 90s, the representation. And so if someone feels that way, there's no reason for me to negate their feelings and what they see in the movie. I just don't happen to see the same thing. And then I was like, is he even trans? But they do go as far as to have him tucking, and it's there. It's definitely there.
Oh, is he even trans? Well, I thought that, I thought we were agreeing that the movie says he's not. He's not.
The people surrounding him say he's not, but he very much is saying that he is.
So I guess this brings up the question of, is Hannibal Lecter the arbiter of what's real in this universe?
And again, he's superhuman. He sees things that nobody else sees. So you, as an audience member, are led to trust him implicitly. And it's not his opinion, it's what he knows. And he is almost omniscient.
Yeah. And I do think that that's kind of the way to read the film. So I do take what he says at face value in this movie. But yeah, you're not wrong on that front either. And I like your point about him experimenting with different identities. I mean, and maybe now it would be different. Lots of dudes apparently like to be feminized or dress in women's clothing for purely sexual gratification purposes, and they are not trans. Mm-hmm. And so I don't necessarily see him dancing, in front of a mirror or whatever with I don't know if there's a lot going on in that scene. And it's easy to miss the fact that he is wearing a lady's head on his head.
Yes, right. It's not a wig. It is a scalp.
Yeah, exactly. I don't necessarily, again, have to read that as being trans so much as fetishized cross-dressing or something like that.
And then the moth is to signal transformation. But then again, Anthony Hopkins says this person is just trying to transform out of being the abused child that he was.
So here is where we have some real two issues of reality breaking, this brings me out of it. The moth and the night vision goggles. The existence of those moths in his possession. They have to be specially imported, specially cared for. He has to go all over the place to get them. You can't even find them. How much fucking money do these moths cost? And look at how he's living. Look at what his, he does for a living. I forget where does he work? He's like maybe an okay tailor at one point in his life. Yeah. Like those moths are a huge investment. I don't know if, and then talk about the night vision goggles in 1991, real, tube-based night vision goggles like he's wearing. And the reason that I think they're in this movie, I don't know if they're in the book or not, is because night vision goggles were on everybody's mind because of the Gulf War, and like that was like a thing. Like, by the way, our guys got night vision, you're fucked. And it was just sort of like a big cultural thing. I honestly, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that's like an $80,000 to $130,000 piece of equipment.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, exactly.
It really helps me not knowing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and most people don't, but I'm just like, is he very rich?
Is there any implication that he was in the war?
No.
Maybe could have stolen a pair?
No. I mean, it's ongoing in 1991. I think that, like, when did the Gulf War resolve?
Yeah,
that year?
There's no implication of that.
I mean, it was only 100 days or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't think that that's the case at all. It's just one of those things where I'm like watching this movie and I'm like, he could never afford these goggles for this one little scene here and one little scene there. It would for him to have them, he would build his life around affording these fucking things.
It always drives me nuts in the beginning, the first time you see them turn them on, because I was like, he would see worse with those on. It drives me nuts. They introduce them earlier in the movie so that they can pay it off later in the movie, but that scene drives me crazy because
there's plenty of light to see where he was at.
It's easier to see with them off where he's at.
Yeah.
It's like a brightly lit apartment complex.
Yeah, and actually blinding yourself was like an issue with the early models. Actually, you could do that. Yeah, not blinding permanently, but just like, oh my god, that's way too bright. Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I guess I can make up in my brain that he stole them somehow. He came across them in a dishonest way.
Night vision story, real quick. Okay. I love this show from Germany called Babylon Berlin. Mm-hmm. It is fan-fucking-tastic. I don't think there's been more than 3 seasons. I think it's 3 seasons. It's based on a novel series. And if you watch it, anybody listening, or you, Meredith, please, for the love of God, watch it with subtitles. I am usually fine with the dubbed version, but I have never seen a dubbed version of anything worse than the dubbed version of Babylon Berlin. But in one of the seasons, a plot point revolves around a sniper having a night vision scope, and this show takes place in the interwar period during the Weimar Republic. And I was just like, wait a minute, there's no freaking, well, they did. The Germans apparently had night vision scopes and night vision equipment at some point in very limited amounts, like at the end of World War One. So there were Panzer tanks that had like experimental night vision equipment. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that this dude would have this night vision scope on a sniper rifle. Every single thing in that show where you're like, there's no way, that's crazy. And then you look it up, you're like, oh my God, exactly that happened. I am disturbed by how true to history this show is.
So someone they had on working on the show knew that deep knowledge of.
I think that was the novels, because they were based on this dude's novels. Yeah, like there's stuff about like, well, there's the shadow secret air force that the Germans have that's training in Russia, and I was like, that sounds like some crazy James Bond. Oh no, that's real. Holy shit! What the fuck? Why is that real? So like, yeah, again and again, it's crazy to me. The place where they like actually deviate from probably history is in the portrayal of like and only a little bit of like club culture and in jazz, but like to convey the sense of that time and place in the cabarets, they explode it into like there's the Du Asche, du Sturbe song, which is like a huge, awesome musical number in the movie. But it's like watching some like $1 billion goth rock music video. It just happens to be jazz. And, but like, yeah, it's very cool. But like, I think it's to convey the kind of emotional reality of being in that room at that time, as opposed to the authentic historical reality, which I think would have been somewhat toned down from what we get. But I'm cool with it. I am on board for that scene in that at that point in the film. It's fantastic, in the series I should say. But yeah, it's a cool show.
What's it called again?
Babylon Berlin. It's a good show. That's all I'm going to say. I think it's an interesting piece of history a lot of people don't know about, and has nothing to do with Silence of the Lambs. And I think it's a really good
night vision goggles. That's
the connection tissue. Yeah, I know. But I think it's a really good mirror to hold up to modern society, because I think that there are a lot of disturbing cultural similarities with the way Americans, their relationship to quote patriotism and the military and support the troops and back the blue and all of that. And the way that a lot of people in Germany apparently felt after World War One, and where that took them. Yeah. And I think that the show, as like a piece of pop history, is a good way to grok that connective tissue in a way that reading a history book would never do for you. Jonathan Demme, I don't know the rest of his film career.
I think the things that stand out the most. Well, first of all, he directed an episode of Columbo.
Nice. Which one?
Season 7, episode 2, Murder Under Glass.
Okay, season 7 was supposed to be the end of the series at that point. That's like the end. Murder on Glass. I'm trying to remember which one that is. Okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
we don't need to go into it.
I think he's most well known for, outside of this, is Philadelphia, and then the remake. I think it's the remake of The Manchurian Candidate in 2004 was Demme, and then Rachel Getting Married, which is just a movie I particularly like.
Is that the one with
Anne Hathaway?
Anne Hathaway. Yeah, I saw that one.
The reason, so.
It didn't click for me, but I mean, also I was it was 15, 20 years ago, so maybe it would click now.
Someone who taught me in film school, Chris Newman.
Oh, me too.
He did the sound for this movie. He did Silence of the Lambs.
He did Silence of the Lambs. That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
And he worked with Demme also on Philadelphia and Manchurian Candidate. And then he turned down Rachel Getting Married for some ridiculous movie that ended up being like the last movie he did. I think it was like Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz. Like it happened to be something that was shooting in New York, and like he just wanted to be local. I don't know, but he always regretted.
It paid really well, if I recall.
Yeah, he always regretted not doing Rachel Getting Married, but he worked with Demme a lot. Oh, he did The Godfather. He did anything French Connection, anything that was shot in New York from like the late 60s through the 80s. And the man has 3 Academy Awards, was nominated 8 times. He was an incredible person to be taught by for a lot of reasons, but mostly because the man was just like a wealth of movie trivia.
Honest.
Too.
Yeah. That third Academy Award He's like, one day I decided I won a third Academy Award, so I wrote some letters and spent some money, because when you get those, you get a pay bump. Every Academy Award makes you a little more money.
Yeah, he was like, work was kind of slow. I wasn't getting a lot of calls, so I just decided to go out and he's like, when there are awards like sound mixing awards, you can campaign for them and you can win.
You can campaign for every single, unless you live in LA or read the Hollywood like trade magazines, it may not occur to you that every single award in the Oscars is campaigned for. And if you don't campaign for it, you're not running for that office. And there was a movie, and I'm already in enough trouble on this one, I don't want to get in trouble again, but there was a movie where people were upset that so-and-so won this but not that. And if you looked into it, they didn't campaign for that. They did not want to be Best Actress. They wanted to win for the producing that they did on the film, because they wanted.
Well, and they probably have a budget for campaigning, and that's what was worth putting the money into.
That might be the case.
But, well, so we can go off in two directions here. One, well, a quick Chris Newman anecdote about this movie was that back to Anthony Hopkins' performance, he said that one of the reasons I think that he terrified Jodie Foster so much was that like Anthony Hopkins would just like chill on set. He would play cards with the crew members, like he was totally out of character, like just doing whatever, was not worried about immersing himself in the role of Hannibal or anything like that. And he would just pop back into character in like a second. And I think she found that terrifying, because he would be like this nice guy you're being friendly with, and then pop, Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
So that was a story that he always told.
So there's this whole idea that I've encountered many times, and I'm not going to be I'm going to tell a story that many people have heard, but I'm going to tell it again. I'm going to tell it again because I love this story. Actually, there's a lot of good stories from that movie, by the way. We should do it on here. The Marathon Man. Fucking great movie. In it, Laurence Olivier
I love
plays
this
the
story.
villain. And what's his name? Little Man. Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, Hoffman.
Little Big Man is also a movie he's in, so Little Man is my catchphrase for him. But yeah, Dustin Hoffman plays a hero, and there's a scene that they have together, and they show up for work, and Dustin Hoffman looks like shit and is like looking like he hasn't slept and hasn't bathed and is like sweating and a mess, and he doesn't even take a car to set. He comes running to the set because he's been, as he explains, Laurence Olivier asks him, like, what is up with you, man? And he's like, well, I had to get into the role. I had to stay up all night. I had to do all this running, and I had to be ready to prepare my thing. And Laurence Olivier asks him, have you tried acting?
Or yeah, I think the exact quote is, it's called acting, son, or something along those lines.
There's a, what is it, in Extras, Ian McKellen has like a similar scene that he does with Anthony Gervais, where he's like, how do you do this? How do you become that character? And he's like, it's a great secret. You see, I pretend to be a wizard. I'm not actually Gandalf the wizard. I pretend. I'm pretending. And he's like, it's so, I never got into that show, and I'm not big on Anthony Gervais or anything, but I love that clip because
Ricky Gervais, but yeah.
Anthony Gervais, his lesser known brother.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, Ricky Gervais, in that scene, he is performing wonderfully like this idiot who thinks he's dropping these pearls of wisdom. I'm pretending. I know that wouldn't occur to you to try and pretend, but it's incredible.
It's very British humor.
It might have been Chris Newman who broke down for me the difference, and you as well. We didn't actually have his class together, but between repertory acting and method acting, and that in the UK, there's a great tradition of repertory acting. You become an actor by performing theater for 10 or 15 years, doing the same thing over and over again. We're going to do Falstaff 400 times this year. The whole idea of we can turn it on and turn it off because I know the words and I've memorized the way to do exactly one of these emotions. And like when you see me do this with my hand, that isn't the character doing that. That's a practiced maneuver that looks like the character doing it that I have made up after doing this scene 300,000 times on stage. It's actually interesting. Bo Burnham works like that too. A lot of people think that all these things that are happening are accidental, but in reality, they are very carefully practiced. People who come from that, they don't get a lot of times like the idea of method acting, of actually having to embody the character. They're like, no, my job is to portray the character.
Yeah.
It's a puppet. Whereas the whole method thing, of which Marlon Brando kind of popularized because he refused to learn his lines. He was like, no, it's much more natural if we put cue cards everywhere, and I literally act like I'm just finding the lines off the walls, because every time he's on screen, what you can't see all of his dialogue is written everywhere that it's, yeah, exactly. So it was just like a different way to approach a role and a different school of thought. But American actors kind of come from this method acting, I guess Russian actors too, this method acting concept, and the British, they don't typically. And I just think that that's I'm probably talking out of turn, but that's what I've been told.
That makes
this
sense.
is what I've been educated to understand.
Yeah. Meryl also he had a story with Meryl about that. And I've been on set. I was lucky enough to be on a set with Meryl, and she also spends all day hanging out with the cast and crew. She does not go back to her dressing room. She stays on set. She goes into the next room if they're shooting, like we were shooting in a house. She just had a bedroom. She just hung out, talked to people, was in that house all day. But Chris's story about Meryl was on Sophie's Choice, and he
just worked on every movie.
He's worked on everything, that man. He asked her in the scene where the child was going to be, spoiler alert, where the child was going to be taken. He knew that it was obviously not a scene they were going to want to do over and over and over again. So he asked her, what's your reaction going to be? Because I need to know where to set my levels, so I'm not the reason that we have to do this scene again. And she told him, I'm going to open my mouth like I'm going to scream, but nothing's going to come out. And he's like, she did it the same every single time.
Repertory.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a practiced thing that this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I've been told that comes from a history of working in theater.
Sure. Because you're doing it every night over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes almost like a sociopathic detachment as opposed to an embodiment. But then you do have people from across the pond, as they say, like Daniel Day-Lewis, who has to literally become Abraham Lincoln for months to play Abraham Lincoln.
It did feel like more attention, please, to me.
I think so too. Well, and
who was it?
So you're thinking of Jared Leto, the Joker.
Well,
who was
Jared
sending
Leto's
people body parts and stuff in the mail to get the character.
I think it was someone like Robert Pattinson though, or someone said do you notice that the people who want to do the method acting are always doing it for characters that are absolute assholes? They're not being method for really nice characters. They just want to be an excuse to be a fucking asshole for an extended period of time.
Well, don't you understand that I am really nice, and I'm just so outside of my experience to be a huge asshole, and never mind. I was saying, speaking of somebody we've talked about in this, it's not outside their experience, but it's just so I have to. It takes me so much effort to get into being an asshole, so I really have to practice.
Spend my time. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to become an asshole. But was Lincoln an asshole? I guess in his own way, probably.
Honest Abe? I don't know. Yeah. I'm from Illinois.
You never heard about Daniel Day-Lewis getting into character for Lincoln and just people being and he used to play these Lincoln pranks on us. A lot of people don't know this, but Lincoln just loved to put worms in his friends' food and shit. He's an asshole, that guy.
So when we were back, we were talking about Oscar, the other direction that I was thinking we could go off in is we were talking about Oscar campaigning. And one of the famous pieces of trivia about this movie is it was up until Parasite, which isn't listed as a horror movie, but I have feelings about that. This was the only horror movie to ever win Best Picture.
That's amazing.
And it was one of 6 to be nominated. Do you have any guesses on what any of the other 6 are?
One of 6 horror films to be nominated?
Nominated for Best Picture. Also, not only did this movie win Best Picture, it's one of the few movies that's won all of the 5 top awards.
Okay, so Hitchcock's got to show up in there. And it was probably late Hitchcock. So I'm going to... You ever play roulette at a casino? You can put your chip between numbers.
Sure.
So I'm going to put this chip on 3 numbers. I would bet Psycho, The Birds, which is not his best film at all, or Vertigo would have been nominated for Best Picture.
I am sorry. The House wins. Hitchcock does not show up on this list.
He doesn't show up on this list.
No.
I would say...
The earliest movie to show up on this list, to give you a hint, is in the 70s.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess too. And so probably not Alien.
No, but
I would have known that. I would just know that about Alien if it was nominated. I'm not like a real Exorcist.
Ding 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 ding.
Yeah, I'm not like a real horror aficionado. And then if The Exorcist nominated, I suppose there's the outside chance that the whole unholy trinity was parts of it were nominated, but I would bet not. But the other two films in that would be The Omen and I forget the third one. There's like 3 movies that they refer to as the unholy trinity.
Oh, I didn't know that. But no, the other two are not.
Rosemary's Baby was the other part of the unholy trinity.
That would be a great one, but it's not nominated.
Yeah, because they came out like around the same time during like this big devil scare. So The Exorcist, The Omen, and Rosemary's Baby.
I love that.
By the way, I've never seen The Exorcist, but I fucking love The Omen and Rosemary's Baby. So I don't know. I think
you'd really like The Exorcist. I mean,
I'm not into like Catholic mythology.
It doesn't. It's not though. Really.
Another movie that Chris Newman worked on.
Another movie that Chris Newman worked on. The man is a legend. There was a kid once in class who was trying to mouth off to him, and he just looked at him and said, "How many Oscars do you have?" Sit down.
For real. Yeah, for real.
And incredible. And also, like, to be a sound man on set, he heard everything. Like, he just sat there with his headphones on. The secrets that this man must have.
Yep. Oh, they left their body pack on again. I know what it sounds like when Meryl Streep takes a dump.
Okay, so the movies that won are not that were nominated: The Exorcist, Jaws, The Sixth Sense.
Oh, is Jaws a horror film?
It's listed as such. I mean, in the context of the Oscars, absolutely. Where else would you put it? Drama?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I don't know where else I would put it. I have a hard time. I guess it's a horror film. I would call it a thriller. And in my mind, thriller and horror films are slightly different. But okay, go on.
I mean, I would also put Silence of the Lambs is horror, but it's also thriller. It's also drama. There's 2 horror scenes in this movie, and otherwise, it's a drama about a woman trying to make her career as an FBI agent.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of tension in that direction, though.
Tons. There's tons.
You think so?
Watching it again, I was looking for the female writer and consultant, anyone on this movie, because he nails the female experience. Like, he just does. And then they turn, like, the point that you made about after that moment, after she calls them out in the room, in the autopsy room.
We don't need you guys in here. Get out.
It doesn't shift necessarily in the tone that you're talking about, but like at that moment they start to drop in nuggets of like what they're missing without her. Like when she's in the girls' room at the end of the movie, she knows exactly where to look for her, where she would hide her pictures. She figures out the sewing thing, which is something that like there's all these little nuggets of like the female perspective. So many things are being missed by not having the female perspective.
I was going to say the one thing I think about is when they're on that plane going to the wrong place, which is a big deal, of course.
Right. Well, and that's such a great cut where the doorbell is being rung on both ends and you don't know who he's going to answer the door for.
I mean, I saw it coming. I don't think I would have in 91, but like I also felt like, to me, I was like, this is the hackery in this movie. This feels a little over the head. I don't know why.
I think now it does. I would imagine then it didn't.
I also deeply fucking hate everything that Nolan and Joy did with the weird time warping in Westworld, because it just feels I don't like. And also with George R. Martin, if you read A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm going to go on a big tangent here. What were the other horror movies that were nominated?
Okay.
Let's just finish that.
It was Jaws, The Sixth Sense, Black Swan, Get Out, and then Parasite. I think the article I was reading before Parasite won, which I would say also is
but most of those were after this one. So like up until this was nominated, what was
just
nominated?
Exorcist and Jaws. Everything else was after.
A couple of those I'm not even sure are horror films again as well. Like
compared to
Get Out is. I don't know about Black Swan.
Yeah, Black Swan, again, agree. Arguable. Sixth Sense definitely is.
I was very bored with Sixth Sense, and I kind of checked out because I got it like real early.
I got that one early too. I remember whispering it to my sister in the theater. And she goes, no. Okay. But I still liked it.
If you're reading A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. Martin, Grimm, as I like to mnemonize him in my brain, a word I just made up. All of a sudden in the most recent book, there is talk of another Targaryen. There's so much made of Daenerys Targaryen being the last Targaryen and the only one who can inherit the Targaryen throne and replace the Lannisters on the Iron Throne and all that shit. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Viserys? No, not Viserys. I can't remember his name now. The eunuch character is like, oh, but no. I've got a secret Targaryen. If it's not there, it's not a twist. If it wasn't there for you to find it, but very well hidden or very clever, it's not a twist. It's a trick you play on a toddler. It's Bilbo asking, "What have I got in my pocket?"
Yeah.
And it just seems like shitty fucking writing to me. And if you throw away some 100 years of film language and start doing flashbacks without indicating that it's a flashback, that this is some other time frame, that's the exact same thing.
Oh, you mean earlier in the movie when we see her as a kid?
No, that's fine. Obviously,
okay.
That's a flashback.
Are you referring to?
I'm talking about Westworld.
Oh.
I'm talking about Westworld.
Okay.
If you cut from this shot to that shot without an indication without any reason to indicate, without any way to discern that there's 100, and I know people did discern it, that there's like 80 years between these two shots. It doesn't have a different look. There's not a fucking lower third. There's nothing. I don't think that the lower third is hacky. I think that that's your obligation to tell your audience where you are. I think that you, as the filmmaker, have infinite power to conceal where we are from your audience, and therefore when you do it, it's not fucking clever, it's cheesy. I just think that, like, it's sort of like when people say, you know why we wrote this scene? Because it was the most interesting thing we could think of. I'm like, oh, okay. This is what I'm getting at. Like, that kind of thing, pulling out a secret Targaryen, and forget about it. We could talk about Game of Thrones, the TV show, because they repeatedly did this, ignoring, film convention, right? So that we can conceal, like, obvious truths from the audience, or just pulling out whatever's off the top of your mind to write the next scene, not informed by what came before it, not informed by the confines of that setting, not informed by the characters that you've populated that setting with. What would this character do next? No. I, the writer, sticking my hands into that scene and deciding what I think is most entertaining next. Okay. It does not reward your audience for engaging with your media. Okay. Anything can happen. Yeah. Nothing I'm watching matters. I don't need to pay attention. They're just going to tell me what's next. Oh, I feel so surprised. As opposed to like, holy shit, I wonder what's going to happen next. We got to what's this guy going to do? Well, what do I know about that character? It doesn't matter what you know about that character, because the writer's just going to make that character do whatever the fuck they want. Like,
yeah, I do think that there are some pieces where that is sort of the point of the piece. Like, you talk about something like Forbidden Zone, like that is the journey you're on. That is what you sign up for.
Dude. Forbidden Zone should basically have a warning up front that says you need to be on drugs. Get yourself on drugs before you hit play.
It is sort of these vignettes of scenes that don't go together. That is sort of like the funniest.
Exactly.
So, but you sign up for that when you're watching a movie like that.
My
like
point.
There are absolute places where that type of filmmaking, that type of storytelling is valid. I think when you inject that into something that is meant to be a story, then yes, it's ham-handed. It's annoying.
And this goes back to my point earlier, is when I look at Anthony Hopkins and think, honestly, probably not his best role, probably not his best work, not really a stretch for him, not really a lot of dynamics going on in that character, not really, multiple it's very one directional. He nails it, but there's not a lot of range being shown in here. And this goes back to me thinking about when I look at creative art and creative works, particularly movies and narrative work, actually I should say, and basically kind of grading it on how hard was this? If you're a writer who's writing a story, just making up whatever entertains you the most next, it's not fucking hard, man. It's not hard. I can close my eyes and imagine any goddamn thing I want. I don't need your unfinished, unformulated, uninformed media polluting my brain. I've got plenty of pollution. I got plenty of it up here. If I'm going to consume your shit, it needs to be Olympic level Herculean efforts. And by that, I mean, and I'm saying this as an asshole with a YouTube show.
I also am laughing that the next movie we're going to talk about are Earth Girls Are Easy, which I don't think was a Herculean effort on anybody's end. And it happens to be a movie that you love.
I do love that movie because, one, again, we're talking about expectations.
Sure.
Okay.
So it's not always true. It's about expectations.
No, it's not always true. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
If you're right, exactly. If you wrap something up in a bow that says, I am prestige television, I am prestige writing, engage with me, use your brainy bits, then I'm expecting that. And if you don't do that, I'm going to be very disappointed. George Martin is having a real problem right now writing his novels. He's got the world's greatest fucking writer's block. And I think I know why. I think he had a very solid beginning, and I think he knows where he wants his story to end. And I personally think that having both of those figured out in advance is a huge mistake because he has now written himself into a spot where he can't get to the ending he wants while maintaining his literary, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like his expectations that he set for himself without some kind of huge leap in logic, right? This is my personal belief. You can write a story backwards. You can know the ending and work backwards from the beginning. And if you happen to have a character in it who is a super genius, that's probably what you have to do because you need to know what's going to happen next so that the super genius character can know it. And you can do that easier by writing backwards to a beginning, right? You do your plotting that way. I think that if you're going to start the beginning of the story, you have to figure out who your characters are, what are the rules and stuff that govern what those characters are, how they behave, what are their actions, how they think. You cast it, okay? And then you have to create the rules for the setting. It can be a high concept setting. I hate it when people say, oh, this bothers you in Dungeons & Dragons? It's a world where there's magic and dragons. Get over it. No, we're setting up. If this bothers you in Game of Thrones, people come back from the dead. It doesn't matter. It does matter. You have to, especially in fantasy and horror and all those things, we have to have very clearly defined rules for this particular setting so that the audience understands how we operate in here so that they can actually engage with your media in a meaningful way. If anything can happen, nothing matters. So you start with these characters, you start with the rules, and then you let them do what they would do, not what you would want them to do, and then it ends where it ends. And if you don't like the ending, you, as a writer, don't get to change it. You have to go back to the beginning of the story and change who those characters are and rewrite it again and see where you wind up, or change what their motivations are, or change the confines in which the setting happens, the rules. But you can't do that in the middle of the story.
Right.
You can't get to act 2.5 and say, I want to change who this character is so I can get to this act 3. You can't do that. You got to start from the beginning. Otherwise you betray your audience. And I get so fucking annoyed when I can see the hand of the writer in the media. That's it. I check out.
It's always your thing.
And by the way, I want to point out, this does not happen in...
where are we coming back to? But
this does not happen in this movie.
What sort of set this off then? Is it just that moment
the
with
doorbells?
The doorbells? Yeah.
The doorbells. Yeah. And that's a minor quibble. I'm just like, okay, you get one scene of this.
Yeah,
but to me, it just feels needlessly manipulative
the
towards the audience.
The night vision goggles is also...
No, that's different. The night vision goggles doesn't bother me because it doesn't feel like the writer's hand interjecting.
But it is. Will. It is. Without that, you don't get that last scene of the movie, which they wanted. Which is
anticlimactic to me, actually.
Oh, I don't know.
She just shoots him.
Well, yeah, but it's not that she just shoots him is the moment of relief. It's the lead up of her walking around in the dark for 2 or 3 minutes before that.
Yeah, there's just something so forced about the doorbell thing that it feels cheesy.
I wonder if it felt like that at the time. I probably didn't. Probably not.
And also, I have a very weird set of rules in which I watch stuff that's like kind of broken
at all. I think now that we've put it in its place of like the intentionality, because I always struggle with but I love musicals and things like that. I don't always need that from a story. I'm okay with the entertainment for entertainment's sake, but I do agree with you when it rears its head in things like Game of Thrones, like this movie.
Game of Thrones drove me insane from the first episode.
Yeah, then
I hate watched it.
Then I understand where you're coming from for sure.
I think that also too is that I think a lot of people have deeper feelings about media than they articulate, and I've had my friends tell me, you're just looking for reasons to hate stuff, and I'm like, no. What happened is I didn't like something and I needed to understand why, because I wasn't allowed to not understand why. When we were at the film school, you show each other your work, and the teacher asks the class, what do we all think about this? What is your opinion? And somebody says, it doesn't really work for me. And I don't know which teachers you had who were running that class. I know you had Chris Newman. Mm-hmm. That wasn't always a class where you were reviewing each other's work.
No.
Sometimes it was. You took them for sound, you didn't. But if you took them for production, you did.
Sometimes. Yeah.
If you were in a directing class or writing class, you would have to review each other's work. I don't remember which teacher it was, but like the first time somebody said, it doesn't really work for me. And the teacher said, yeah, why? Mm-hmm. And the kid said, well, I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. Get out. Never tell somebody that their stuff doesn't work for them again without knowing why, because it's a useless fucking note. And it's purely like, you just don't like it. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if you don't like it. Know why.
Yeah.
And so it came up for me a lot where I would watch a movie and be like, I fucking hate this movie. Why do I hate this movie? What about it do I hate that everybody else seems to be loving? And I would really analyze the shit out of why I didn't like it. For example, I hated the fucking Avengers. I hated it. And it turns out, by the way, I mean, it goes to a point because I fucking hate everything Joss Whedon does. And it wasn't like I was going in there to hate it because Joss Whedon did it, but I didn't like it. And I couldn't figure out why. And actually, my wife put it into words, and she was 100% right. She's like, well, he's directing to the commercial break, and there's no commercial breaks. He's constantly relieving tension and stakes all the way through it, so it looks like a sawtooth. Rather than building tension, he's like, well, we got to get rid of this tension because we're going to commercial break. And so there's a quip and a cut and a quip and a cut and a quip and a cut. And it, like, for me, it doesn't connect because I don't want a parasocial relationship with these characters. But if the people who watch Joss Whedon stuff, Meredith, I'm probably going to call you out a little bit here. I'm sorry. Like, what people seem to, I think, get out of it is that, like, these are their friends. That they want these people to be their friends. I don't need more fucking friends.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a really big difference in how we consume things. Is like, for me, Buffy in particular, it's not true to your experience. It's very true to my experience.
You fought a lot of vampires in school?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. I'm talking about the vampires.
I'm joking. I only really watched the first season. And in fairness, I liked the first season. Yeah. I like the Monster of the Week aspect of it.
Yeah, but like, that's the least important aspect of it. The more important aspect of it is the relationships. And that whole 7 seasons is tension between relationships, which there is a ton of. And it's not other things that were coming out at the time, which was like Dawson's Creek. I have a new boyfriend every week, and we're always fighting about that. That wasn't her thing. She has 3 major relationships over the course of 7 seasons. Like, she wasn't a girl that was in and out of relationship. And all of the role models that I had for myself at that point were people that were obsessed with boys and wanted to know where the next boy was coming from. And she had so many other concerns. Her friends were more of a concern for her. Yep. Her mission was more of a concern for her. And she didn't have to lose herself for those things to be important. She didn't have to not be the cheerleader in order to care about those things. They could go together. And I think Joss deserves a lot of credit on that front. I give him a lot of credit there. It's actually what you just said about losing yourself. It's really funny. A friend of ours, I forget why we were talking about, but she brought up the fact that she hated the 40-year-old virgin because he had to sell his toys. Hated it. She was like, it broke my heart. Broke my heart. I was like,
agree with that. I never even noticed that. Jesus.
Right. She didn't have to drop. And of course, she changes over the course of 7 seasons. She's a much harder person by the end than she is at the beginning.
As she should be.
But she's still quippy. She's still her. I can hear what you're saying about Joss Whedon. I think especially though when you're talking about something like the Avengers, like that is what superhero in that context is, like pulpy entertainment. Like, you are going for something a little bit easier, and he is that guy. Like, I don't need a hard-hitting Avengers. I don't think. That's not why I'm going to the theater to see it.
I liked Iron Man. I'm not, so full disclosure, Greg is not into the Marvel movies, but I did like the first Iron Man quite a bit when I saw it. It did connect with me on some level, but like literally everyone since then I've not been into.
Well, this comes back to like, you like operas, like superhero movies are musicals.
I don't know what it was about Iron Man. I might have just been in like in a place when Iron Man came out or something like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it was, but actually that movie really connected with me. But like the Avengers, like I feel like it literally has you get to the climactic battle with all these, is that the one? Yeah, where all the aliens come out of the time portal and stuff like that or whatever, and they're going to attack New York City. There are no stakes at all going into that scene whatsoever. They are in danger of destroying a set piece, the aliens, this backdrop of New York filled with people that with no character. You know what I mean? Like, there's no characters who are really in danger there, in my opinion. We know that the Avengers are not in danger at all. So it's just like, what is this? I'm just going to watch these little blips move around on a computer screen because that's all they are. It's like, it's all, I think, they're just moving, I don't care.
It's a musical sequence. It's song and dance.
You know who else I don't like who says the exact same thing? All right, we're just going to we're airing grievances. Bring out the Festivus pole.
Yeah, you've got it. Go ahead.
What's that guy's name who did The West Wing? That guy.
Oh, Alan Sorkin. You hate him, yeah.
I hate
Aaron
Sorkin.
Yeah.
Aaron Sorkin.
I understand that. He's just so dialogue-y for me, and he thinks he's so smart. It's just
he does think he's very smart, but I've heard him say that, like, I write dialogue in a musical context. Like, I don't write dialogue the way people speak. I am writing a musical. My movies, my shows are happening in a musical world. There's just no music. And so the dialogue that I am writing is meant to be understood not authentically, that like it's actually happening, but in the way that, like, in a musical, hey, we're talking. Yeah. This is real life. Yeah. Now we're singing, and this isn't happening.
Yeah. Reality
this is a magic
here,
thing.
and this is living somewhere over here. See, I like that in media. I sit down to a movie not to repeat the things that I know to be true every day. I sit down to experience something outside of that.
Yeah, I get that.
And that's not always true, like, at all. But one thing I think that I love about this movie is that Hannibal Lecter is otherworldly, and it makes the movie more fun. It makes it not one of those movies that you watch once and is impactful and you don't want to see again, because it's like, it's a drag on your emotional state.
Yeah. I'm not invested enough in this movie to want to see it again, but it wouldn't offend me to see it again the way that Dr. Sleep, I don't think my soul could ever take watching that movie again. Right. I don't think I could ever go back in and watch that movie again at all.
Which is the Shining follow-up. Yeah, I saw it once in the theaters. You've said this before. I don't remember feeling that way about it. I've only seen it once, and that connection didn't happen for me, but I'd have to watch it again.
Deeply upsetting film.
Right.
As a parent.
As a parent. So I wasn't a parent when I saw it, so maybe I would feel very differently about it now and might avoid it for that reason. Yeah.
I can't do it. It was not fun times.
Yeah.
It was a dark time for me.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up.
This is a long episode.
We should probably wrap up. Another point to Anthony Hopkins' performance not being so difficult is, like, we made this point, which we had the opposite reaction to it, but where, like, Beetlejuice had like 14 minutes of screen time, Anthony Hopkins has like 24 or 25 minutes of screen time.
Right.
He's actually, like, it's the second shortest performance to win Best Actor or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's what he does is very impactful, but I agree is probably not a huge range. Like, him and Jodie only have 4 scenes together in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's big. Like, I think that if it's more than that, it's not a horror film. Then it really is a drama, because now it's a movie about people talking.
Yes, but dramatic characters probably have a lot more range. Something about his performance in this was so impactful that
people just like him.
People like the character. Well, and I think that would be, I think, to support that point of yours, like, they've gone on to make how many different versions of this character? Of course. I
was not cool growing up. I'm not cool now, but I was exceedingly not cool. Like, I got beat up by kids in the drama club when I was a kid. That's an actual true story. I was, like, really annoying and very uncool. You went to is like, it's like that was middle school. Jeez. But my point is that, like, I hate when I smell a popularity contest with every fiber of my being. And so if the answer, why is this thing good? Why does this person win? Why does this, because people like him? I fucking hate him. I hate that. But I get so angry. They like the character. I don't think it's like in the way that let me ask you a question. It's not like I want to hang out with Hannibal Lecter. I think you're wrong. I think people do want to hang out with Hannibal Lecter as long as they believe there will be no consequences. I think that people want that proximity to power. People want to be a fly on the wall. People want to see what he will do in lots of situations. They want to be liked by him. They want to be Clarice. They want to be protected and liked by him. They want to be in his fold of his power and have access to that power and coolness without actually getting their hands dirty or being threatened by it. I maintain that you don't get that without the performance.
You just don't.
I think he's very good. I think that he kills the role. What I wanted to ask you was, can you pull up who else was nominated for Best Actor that year? Because maybe he was the best actor that year. Remember, it doesn't mean of all time. It just means that year.
Well, this was 1991. The reason we are talking about this movie.
It was a big year.
Winner, Anthony Hopkins. Nominees was Warren Beatty in Bugsy, Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, Nick Nolte in The Prince of Tides, and Robin Williams in The Fisher King.
Okay, yeah. No, he wins. I honestly, I can't speak to Nick Nolte in Prince of Tides because I actually never saw that. Cape Fear, maybe. I could see being a contender for that, but maybe a toss-up. I would probably give it to Hopkins between the two. I liked The Fisher King when I was a kid, but I don't think... No! Robin Williams' character has way more range than any of those other actors. That character in that movie, you seen Fisher King?
Yeah, many years ago. I think we should. Yeah, I'm interested to rewatch it. I don't know how
Fisher
it holds
King
up,
character. Robin Williams' character has range, depth, and reach. He has to do a lot to be that character. It's not one note at all, and there's a lot going on there. And so I would actually say that's probably the strongest performance by my own metrics for the year. But Academy is never giving Robin Williams Best Supporting Actor at that point. He's
Best
the
Actor.
genie.
Best Actor.
Best Actor.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, he's not getting it. They're not going to put up with his acceptance speech.
Well, and we've talked a lot about Anthony Hopkins, but Jodie Foster also won for leading role, and she
deserves it.
Well, it's up against Gina Davis, Thelma and Louise, Susan Sarandon, Thelma and Louise, and then the other two, Laura Dern, who I love, but Rambling Rose and Bette Midler for The Boys. I would say
I give it to Jodie.
Probably, but I also think that Gina and Susan probably split the vote on that one a little bit also.
That could be. Yeah. You can't run more than one candidate. Yeah. That's a good point.
So
that's a good thought. I didn't think about that.
All right. I think that's yeah. Do you have more, or is that a good button to end this one?
I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. There's no more. There's no more to be said.
90-minute episode of Midnight Local. It's time for a pee break.
All right. Bye.
All right, guys. Midnight Local available wherever you get your podcasts. Good night and good luck. Laters.